All right. Happy to have on my next guest, Quang Nguyen. He represents Legislative District 1. He's in the Arizona House. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, Jeff. Thank you for having me on. I heard a lot of great things about your show, so I'm honored to be on your show today.
Well, it's always good when people don't talk bad. There's plenty of that out there too. But you have an amazing story, Quang, that I think we need to share because it really... People forget the craziness that happened in Vietnam so many years ago and the communism. And your family is originally from Vietnam and you guys got out right there at the end. Why don't you share your background a little bit with us?
Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate the opportunity to share to how I got here today. So I was born back in 1962, just north of Saigon, about 200 miles north of Saigon. And, by the time we had the first Tet Offensive, 1968, I was 6 years old. And I remember everything. So we sort of, every day you wake up, there's a war. So you don't really pay attention to what's going on. So your job is to go to school and trying to find a meal or two in between. So I survived all the way through to the final invasion in 1975. And, by the skin of my teeth, I got out on a C-130 just 6 days before the fall of Saigon. I don't know how all that happened. I was 12 years old, got to the United States. And by the way, my whole entire family served in the South Vietnamese military. And several of my cousins wound up in re-education camps, and a couple of them were executed. But the majority of my family members got out, including my dad, who served before World War II, during the French occupation. Yeah. And he fought the French, and then he fought the Japanese during the occupation of Japan in Indochina, and then the French occupation, and then joined the South Vietnamese army and fighting alongside with the Americans against communism. And so it's a pretty long history, along with my two older brothers who were spent quite a few years in the war themselves and also injured. So make a long story short, I came over here, learned how to speak English. The only way to survive is to learn how to speak English. And I somehow got myself through, working odd jobs and got myself through college. Got to be a part-time professor. Moving forward, I went to work for Northrop Aircraft on F-18s, the original F-18s, and then just moved on to the corporate ladder. And eventually in 2019, a couple of people came to me and said, you had to run for office. And I thought they were crazy. I ran for office and I won the first time around, and the reaction was, now what?
Yeah.
And so here I am.
That's amazing. And I think that we lose so much of our history. And you've been here as a first generation American, Quang, and I think we look at people whose family has been here for generations, and let me get your perspective. They have lost the perspective and why and how America has been so great for so long. And do you fear, like I fear, that we're going the way of other countries down this road of socialism and even worse?
Yeah, so in a short time, so I've been here for 48, 49 years, and I got to tell you, 48 years is a very short time, right? In any country's history, in American history and so on. I can see that the downfall, we're slipping and sliding slowly, but we are slipping and sliding, and it's frightening to where it's starting to resemble the beginning of the Vietnam War for me. Unfortunately, I saw the end of it, and it's not pretty, and I don't want your children or your grandchildren to ever see what I witnessed and what I saw. It's really tragic when we have this absolutely beautiful country and all the freedoms that sort of, when this country adopted me, all these things were given to me. And all I can do is learn how to speak English, understand what the Constitution is all about, understand that this country is a law and order type of a country, and you shouldn't let it go. You shouldn't let it slip. And so my job is to continue to be here and make sure that we don't slowly destroy our state and our nation. And I would tell you how great this country is. I have two children, first generation Americans born here in the United States. And one graduated from college and is a productive citizen and just a good conservative kid. And my younger daughter is a naval officer who's currently serving in a submarine force. Which country would take a young child from, an immigrant family and said, one day you're going to go to Annapolis and you're going to be a naval officer and you're going to serve us proudly? I can't find too many countries that would give my children those opportunities.
No, I agree 100%. You said something that I caught there, that the United States, adopted you, your adopted country, but really, and I'm 48, so I've been alive for as long as you've been here, that you came to America as well, Quang. But, we all kind of adopt it because we didn't start it. Even if you've been here for, I can trace my family's lineage back to the Mayflower, but it was previous generations that built this up. And each generation is expected to fight for the freedoms and to fight to make sure that the next one is free, to make sure the next one isn't mired in $34 trillion in debt and on and on. And we've lost sight of that no matter where your origins come from.
Yeah. So, it seems life is getting easier and easier every year that I live here. I remember being a teenager, life was getting easier, and then I went to college and it got really easy. It just feels like you're kind of cruising along. And I remember one day I was putting gas in my motorcycle, in Costa Mesa, California, and I looked over across the island at the gas pump, and I see a older gentleman with a field jacket, a green field army jacket. And I looked over at him and I said, "Did you serve in Vietnam?" And he just looked at me, and he nodded his head. And I said, "Well, I just want you to know that I really appreciate your service, and I want to thank you for your service because I am here because of people like you." And my gosh, he was tearing up because, according to him, that was the first time an American from another country actually said thank you for his service. The conversation was very brief, but you can see he was all teary, and that changed that perspective in my life because I was 22 years old. I was riding a motorcycle, and I was really happy. I went to college, and I have a corporate job in Irvine, and I myself had forgotten that some of those people were serving alongside my dad and my older brothers. And the worst part about it is that I actually served our nation 10,000 miles away as Americans. They did. No one has to go there. It's God's a second land, right? No one should be over there and being shot at. And so ultimately, the result is Ultimately, the result is that we got 58,000 names, on a granite wall. And, it took me a while to get there to understand the sacrifice that Americans and this nation and the history of this nation, it's the generosity is beyond my comprehension and what I can describe to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're talking with Representative Quang Nguyen of Legislative District 1. It's an amazing story, and I highly recommend everyone go to the Vietnam Wall Memorial in Washington, D.C. too. And I also hope that we step back as a country, Quang, because you hear the mention of civil war and all that more than I've ever heard in my lifetime, and that you've lived through that, and that's the last thing that we ever want, ever. And I think some people are almost wanting it.
Right, Jeff. The last person to ever want to see war is somebody who lived through a war. Right? Yeah. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. There's thousands of people die. And I remember living across kitty corner from a Buddhist temple. And during the Spring Offensive of 1972, nearly 70,000 Vietnamese soldiers were killed. So the casket was coming through these Buddhist temples like daily, maybe 5, maybe 7, maybe 10 a day. It is, to listen to the parents crying and wailing at night, throughout the night, is a sound that one can never forget.
Yeah.
And I don't ever want to see another civil war. While I believe in defending the country, it's easy to talk about a civil war or a war when you've never been into one, all in one, right? And so I want people to be aware that, it's not a pretty picture. You're talking about lack of water, lack of food. You can't even show up outside of your door. You don't know when the next mortar is going to come at your house. Kids go to school and shot at school or die at school. I mean, the school I went to in Vietnam was full of bullet holes. Just imagine that for a second. And here's the funny part about schools, right? So over here you have these beautiful schools, and you have teachers, and you're safe, and hungry kids can be fed at school. But yet we'll continue to ask for more money to educate, and 40% of our kids are not educated, can't read at grade level, and on and on and on. And Jeff, the school problems, right?
Oh yeah.
And I remember back in the days where I went to school and full of bullet holes outside of the school, but yet we were studying pretty darn hard, and most of us lost our dad, if you really want to know the truth. So when people say, well, school is pretty tough over here, you have a lot of single family or single moms and single dads and so on. And I'm like, man, that was a normal thing back in Vietnam, right, for our kids. But somehow we were able to learn, and so those kids immigrated to the United States back in '75 through the '80s. They just like little sponges, and they just absorb every bit of information you give them, and wind up on top of their classes.
Yeah, absolutely. Quang, what I want to do, let's transition into education, because I think that's a big one that's impacting the legislature as well. I got to take a quick break, though. Can you stick around, Quang?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hang on one second. And I'd love to hear from you. Talk with Jeff at iCloud.com and text message as well, 877-971-3971. I want to remind you about my good friends at Desert Gold Exchange. I think it's really important to own a little bit of physical gold and silver. I don't tell you what to do, but I tell you, for my family, it has been for decades. And I should almost pull Quang back on. And this one, I have a little piece of gold that actually came from Vietnam that was wafer thin that people used to wear in their clothing. And I have it for the gold, but I also have it for the historical side of that. But anyway, owning physical gold and silver when things really, go to heck in a handbasket is really important. Call Desert Gold Exchange. It's a family-run company right here in Arizona. They keep their overhead low. They pass the savings on to you. Justin and his team do a really, really good job. Here's their number, 888, and tell them I told you to give them a call, 888-852-4343, 888-852-4343, or check them out online at desertgoldexchange.com. More to come. Hang tight. Hey, if you're listening to the podcast, please give us a great review and also give us a comment in there. If you're not listening to the podcast, subscribe. Look up The Jeff Orbit Show. Also on video, Rumble, follow us there, and on YouTube, subscribe. We appreciate everyone who's done that.
You're listening to The Jeff Orbit Show.
I've got a pile of stuff for Rob Wilson of Timberline Firearms and Training. He'll be on the program here next week. I think he's coming in Monday. Look, support a great Northern Arizona company, indoor shooting range, all the firearms, ammunition, accessories you need, a Liberty Safe. I'm pointing at mine right now here in the studio. All those training courses so that you are a knowledgeable firearms owner, safe firearms owner, and also fighting for the Second Amendment. Call Timberline Firearms and Training. Book one of his great courses right now at 928-526-7900, 928-526-7900, or get more info at timberlinefirearms.us. Okay, welcome back. Talking with Representative Quang Nguyen, represents in the House, in the Arizona House, Legislative District 1. We'll get to education in a second. I actually want to hit on this one because you just came off the House floor, Quang, and voted on HB 2245, which I believe is you're the primary sponsor on that bill. And it has to do with one of the scourges in our country right now, which is fentanyl. What happened there?
Yeah, so I was listening to your commercial just now, so I just want your audience to know that I'm also the president of Arizona State Rifle and Pistol Association, which makes me the top guy in the state of Arizona on the Second Amendment side of it. I sort of lived the Second Amendment. But let's talk about.
So we can have you back and talk for about 3 hours on that one, Quang, because there's so much to hit on. So, but yeah, the fentanyl. I mean, that's such a huge topic. The fentanyl issue, though, is crazy. What's going on?
Yeah, so the fentanyl issue. I've been in office since 21, and I'm going into my fourth year right now, second term, and also chairman of judiciary. I've been fighting against fentanyl for 3 years now, and it's coming on to my fourth year. And it's interesting. I got full support of leadership to go fight this thing. It's interesting that everyone on both sides of the aisle has fentanyl as a bullet item on their platform, and everybody thinks that fentanyl is a bad thing. But when it comes down to protecting the citizen or public safety, we're not successful at introducing any form of fentanyl, criminal law at all to go after the fentanyl dealers. So for 2 years in a row, I lost. I mean, these fentanyl, great fentanyl bills, homicide drug bills, supported by Yavapai County Sheriff, Yavapai Prosecutor, Maricopa County, Pinal County, law enforcement agencies, but yet, surprisingly, it just couldn't get out of committee. And by the way, we have a majority in the committee. So I don't have to tell you who has to vote no in order to kill a bill, right? So, we got a couple of Republicans who are always voting no, killing bills. And so now, today, we literally have a Republican that wasn't very happy, and we had to back the committee in order to get a fentanyl bill out. And so we did it today. We had the county attorney coming out to support. We even had the AG office on the other side coming out to support my bill. And it barely passed today. So it came out of committee. What it does is if you're a dealer or if you possess more than $1,000 or more worth of drugs that includes fentanyl, convicted is felony 2, and you're going to a minimum of 5 years, presumptive 10, and maximum of 15 years. And so if you've been convicted of the same crime before, you can look at 10, 15, and 25. So we finally got that out. I mean, we have to seriously look at this. You can't come down to the legislature every day, pretend to work on fentanyl, and then decide to vote no on fentanyl. I mean, what was
the reason, Quang? I mean, as far as what did they say was the holdup?
Multiple reasons. You see, as a chairman of judiciary, so I'll just tell you my philosophical view of crime is that we need to put people in jail to protect the public. That is all I'm interested in. I'm not in, I don't have what you call misplaced compassion and use the U.S. Constitution to protect the drug dealers. For example, I was told that, I was removing civil liberties from these drug dealers. And my reply to that is, look, everyone has constitutional rights. Drug dealers that actually kill, they have two things going on. First of all, they got a date court and they got a free lawyer. And that's all you should get, right, as a criminal who actually kills somebody. The rest of the Constitution is applicable to all of us. And it's very difficult to get by some of these purists. To basically, I'm a constitutionalist and I'm going to make sure I'll protect the drug dealer to the best of my ability. Now, I'm talking about Republicans speaking today. I'm not talking about Democrats here. So you can see my voice probably get a little frustrated because for 3 years, I can't get these fentanyl bills passed. And it is flowing across the border. And yet we're not giving law enforcement the tools and the prosecutors the tools to be able to go after these mass murderers.
Well, and if you're soft on crime, Quang, look at California. where it's like, hey, you can commit crime up to $950 for stealing stuff, right? There's no,
right.
there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? There's no reason not to do it for a lot of people. There's no repercussions.
Right. So we have there's a certain number of people, and on both sides of the aisle, there's a certain number of people that believe that we're spending too much incarcerating people. So we got to back off and not put everyone in jail. The problem I have with that is when they come out of jail, for the most part, recidivism rate is pretty high for a lot of these people. So they come right out and commit crimes again. What I like to do is spend as much money as we possibly can to incarcerate bad people and keep people in there so that when my children go to the mall or your children go to school, that we don't have these problems in those locations. We got to keep the public safe. So I'm a little bit hardcore on the opposite side of criminal justice reform, if you know what I mean, Jeff.
Yeah, and it's the fentanyl issue just keeps exploding, so it's something has to happen there, and the drugs are pouring over with the open border. Let's hit on a couple of your other bills as well, Quang, and we're talking with LD1 Representative Quang Nguyen, and it's that's largely LD1's largely the Prescott area, right? I mean, does it go to like Black Canyon areas like that?
Yeah, so we go from Ash Fork up on the I-40. All the way down to the southern tip of Black Canyon City, just right on top of Cave Creek and Anthem, the northern part of Maricopa County.
Yeah.
So it covers the Quad City, Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey, Humboldt, and it goes all the way out north to Chino Valley. So it's 8,300 square miles, and I believe it's the largest district in the state of Arizona.
Oh, wow. Yeah, rural districts, you and LD7 and LD6. I mean, these
right.
are crazy big districts, bigger than I think some of them are bigger than states back east, right? Okay, right. You've got, obviously in the legislative session right now, I noticed you had like 5 bills you were sponsoring, including the fentanyl one that we were talking about. I saw something on the on firearms. What was that one?
Yeah, so just to go back to 2021, that's the last time Republicans passed a firearm bill. So Mr. Biasucci, who is the current majority leader, he passed a bill that I supported, and it would declare Arizona as a Second Amendment sanctuary state.
Yeah.
And then I follow in the same year to the blacker version of our state. So basically, when we passed that bill and Governor Ducey signed into law, it protects the industry completely from frivolous lawsuits. So if a firearm is illegally used or misused, the state of Arizona, you cannot sue the firearms makers, ammo makers, retailer, FFL holders, and so on. So the state of Arizona is actually completely protected from frivolous lawsuits. And that was a big deal because we mirror the federal statute to protect manufacturers, only because Mr. Biden was sworn in 2021 and he was in the Rose Garden. The first thing he said was, with everything, that every bit of energy I have, I want to make sure that we repeal PLACA to allow people to sue gun manufacturers. And they were successful in some of the states, causing some of these gun companies to actually disappear. But that's not going to happen here. So, Jeff, I got to tell you, whenever you run into a firearm manufacturer, convince them to come here because they're completely protected.
Yeah, and Arizona's become such a strong Second Amendment state. I mean, the carry concealed that went into effect where you didn't need to get, do the CCW course, which I still recommend doing that course because you can get to other states that also, have that as well.
Right.
So it's a big
advantage. And I forgot to tell you about the bill. Yeah, I forgot to tell you about the bill, the Second Amendment bill. Right now, under ISO 9000, referring to the credit card. So credit card companies decided to have a special code just for firearms. To me, that's a violation of privacy. So, right? So if you buy a lawnmower and you buy a jug of milk and you use your credit card, no one knows about it because it's just a general grocery code, right? Or whatever it is.
Lumped together.
But when you buy so when you buy a firearm, it goes onto a special code, or if you buy an accessory, or if you buy ammo, it goes into a special code. And you know what that is, right? It's called a polite form of registration. So at some point in time, federal government is going to go to the bank and say, I want your database.
Give me the list.
Everyone give me the list of all the credit card purchase. And when they look at it, they'll be able to say, hey, Jeff bought an AR-15 and Quang bought 1,000 rounds of 9mm ammo. And so I'm running a bill to ban the bank from using a code to categorize firearm purchase in the state of Arizona. So that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I love it. What's that bill? House bill?
I have not dropped it yet. So we're still working with the NRA on the language, because there's a couple of things that the NRA called me yesterday and they say, hey, can we tweak this a little bit? And I agree to it.
Well, let me know as that progresses, because I think that's really important, especially, Quang, as we get to a world that, and I don't want to go this way, but I bet you it goes, a central bank digital currency where they try to get everybody, because right now you could go pay cash for that, for example. But once they get a digital currency in, then they're categorizing everything. They have more mechanisms and levers for control. So it's a huge problem. So that's a good one.
Well, just remember this. Prior to 1939, Germany decided to have a registration list for the entire nation.
Yep.
Right. So when 1939 came around, guess what? They had a list. They collected all the firearms. And then you know what happened? Yeah, you know what happened after 1939. Same thing with Vietnam. Same thing with Cambodia. Killing fields. When's the last time, Jeff, you heard somebody talking about a killing field? We don't talk about it anymore. 2 million people killed in 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was, I mean, people, again, back to what we were saying at the beginning of this hour, people don't remember the history, and people think we live in some kind of bubble where it won't happen again. And as soon as you forget your history, it happens. And sadly, a lot of the generations that lived through that, whether it be even Vietnam, but back to World War II and before, are disappearing, and there's no direct tie anymore. Quang Nguyen is with us, represents Legislative District 1. Let's wrap up with, education's a big issue. The budget's a big issue. I had Speaker Ben Toma just the other day. We were hitting on that. He assures me, and other representatives that have been on the program, that the ESA program, which I think is a great program and a model for other states, the governor's going after it. She hates this thing, and she's hitting it from every angle, from every crisis that's being created. Is it safe? Because that's what they're telling me. Is the Republicans going to stick together on this one?
Yeah, so ESA is something that Speaker then Majority Leader Ben Toma was working on it, and surprisingly, I mean, this thing passed and became a model legislation for the rest of the United States. I'm proud to be a part of it, and I got to tell you, public education hasn't worked. As I think I mentioned earlier, that only about 40% of the kids in school can actually read and do math at grade levels. And so you can see it is failing. And generally we spend about, between federal and state funding, almost $14,000 per child. The ESA program, starting at $7,000, I think it's kind of sort of moved to about $9,000. And people were saying, hey, this is going to bankrupt the state. And I will tell you, that's not what JLBC was saying, that we're not broke at all. So I think from the legislative standpoint, I will do everything I can to make sure that Governor Hobbs doesn't trying to strip that away from our children. And so I have a different view of education spending than a lot of my conservative Republicans. So not that I'm not conservative, I just have a different view when it comes to education. We're spending a lot of money. We are wasting a whole lot of money, and our kids aren't very bright.
Yeah.
Would you and I agree with that?
I agree. And it's getting worse.
So then somebody says, well, why would you want to spend more money? If I have to spend more money at the private school, ESA, homeschool, to better educate our children, I'll take that all day long. And by the way, let's talk about the budget for a second. Everybody's saying we got a shortfall. If you remember back in February, Jeff, we introduced a bipartisan budget from the previous year. It was voted in by bipartisan. And we took that budget and we added the population adjustment and we added the inflation, right? And she vetoed it. Just imagine, had she signed that budget back in February, we would have been $500 million up right now at this point, instead of $1.6 billion down in a 12-month period. So now the left is running around telling us that we're responsible for that huge shortfall. And in fact, we were the ones to introduce the budget back in February of 23, and she vetoed it. So, and
it's a phony crisis. It's a phony crisis, Quang.
Yeah. It's phony. It's temporary, but it's phony. It's a talking point.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where, you want to throw up every day, after a session. At the end of the day, you want to either take a shower, throw up, or
clean. Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we can fix this problem. But it's not the ESA and it's not the tax cut. It's none of that. It's the fact that she wanted to spend money like crazy.
Yeah, I wish Hobbs would stop blaming the children and stop blaming the hard-paying taxpayers of the state of Arizona. All right.
Absolutely.
Quang, hey, I really enjoyed our conversation. I want to get you back on. I know you'll be busy through the session, but anytime, especially your gun bill, I'd love you to just send me a text. We'll get you on. And I know you've got a race down there for LD1, of course. Election season's heating up. So I'll include your website in the podcast once that gets out later on. And I wish you the best, and we'll talk again real soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much for having me on, and have a happy New Year.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it. All right, and I'd love to hear from you folks. Talk with Jeff at iCloud.com. Thanks for watching this video. Thank you to everyone listening on the podcast as well. Do me a favor right now. Please subscribe. I appreciate everybody that's doing it. Subscribe, and share with your friends. If you've already done that, leave a comment. That helps us out a lot, and we'll see you back here real soon.